Thank you all for coming to celebrate Amy's life, and I appreciate it, and she would too. I'm going to say a few words about Amy, and then the floor is open for everybody who would like to come up and share stories of her. Oh no! Did it break?
Yes!
And sorry, this is just short. What we're going to do is videotape these stories so the girls will have be able to hear these stories and know their mother as they get older. There's a saying that everybody dies and few live. Amy lived, and Amy lived very well. In April of 2002, Amy and I met out one night through a mutual friend. We had a great night laughing. And at the end of the night, I worked up the courage to ask her out, and she said no. A few days later, I got an email from her, and a few days after that, we went out on our first date, and we were inseparable since then. We fell deeply in love and started a wonderful family together. Along the way, life in suburbia didn't quite satisfy an itch we had to go on a trip. And towards the end of 2010, a friend of ours, who had a 2-year-old at the time, became gravely ill with a rare and aggressive cancer. Towards the end of 2010, around the holidays, his case was deemed terminal. And we talked with him for a while, and we were discussing the trip we were thinking of going. He encouraged us, and a few weeks later we quit our jobs and head out on a trip of a lifetime. What was funny is when we left this house, we said to each other, could you imagine if that was us in a couple of years, dying of a rare and scary cancer and never having lived a dream? Little do we know 5 years later. So on our trip out, we spent a month in Hawaii. It was wintertime in New England, so we spent a month in Hawaii thawing out. And we came back and got in our car and just went. We climbed and we saw a lot of the country, and we had just an amazing time. Towards the end of our trip, our friend that was terminal actually passed away, and we were there for his service. And instead of having a wake, they had something like this where everybody could tell stories. And Amy just said, "I love that. This is what I want." I thought I had to put that in the memory bank for 40 to 50 years from now. One thing about Amy is that she just absolutely loved nature. She'd always be reading books on the trees and the flowers and the animals and the plants, and wherever we were, she'd always be giving biology lessons on everything that was going on around, and her absolute just love and wonder of everything in this world was just infectious and incredible. As we moved out here, Amy found work that she loved with people that she loved. She was starting a family. She lived near the beach like she always wanted to live. She played beach volleyball all the time. And life was exactly how she wanted it. She fought so hard, worked so hard, and life was amazing for her for a few years. And she was just flourishing, and it was incredible to just be around her. She was just so happy. Everything was how she wanted it. We were pregnant with our second child, Giselle. And Amy was just so excited, just so happy. She just adores her children. And then one day I hear, "Hey, what's this one?" And that was the start of this nightmare. When the diagnosis came in that she had a rare, invasive, aggressive cancer, the doctors recommended that she terminate the pregnancy. Amy asked them, "Is this baby healthy?" And they said yes, and she says that she deserves to come into this world, figure it out. And we found an amazing group of doctors and nurses at UCLA that did just that. In Amy's moment of truth, when all was on the line, she chose righteously. And at that, her defining moment, she became all that we knew that she is. She decided right at the beginning that she was not going to let this cancer make her miserable and angry and bitter with the world. She said, "We're going to fight this with positivity, and anything we can control, we will." And she did just that. She was so positive and courageous throughout this whole fight. It's just incredible to see the strength that she fought with to get home to her babies. We had a saying or in the hospital, that it could always be worse. And one day we were down in the children's play area, and some of the pediatric patients that were well enough to go out of their room were there. And we looked at each other and we said, this is where the saying stops. That's where it can no longer be worse, as if you were a child in this unit. Weeks later, or months later, we actually found out that there was parents that could not afford the transportation to get to be with their children in the NICU, PICU, and pediatrics acute care. Amy thought that was terrible and just said, parents should be with their babies in their time of need. Let's start a fund to make sure that parents can always afford to be with their kids. And that's where that fund came out that is on the service information. That conversation was actually our last real conversation we had before the cancer really hurt her badly. But even through all that, she would still just fight through it and smile and try and make jokes, and it was incredible. She showed me just how amazing the human spirit can be. How strong it can be in such impossible odds. She showed how strong a mother's love can be for their babies. And she went through untold horrors to try and get home to her babies, and she did a few times, and she had the time of her life with them. Continuing on in Amy's spirit, we will not feel sorry for ourselves, because not one day did she ever feel sorry for herself. We will heal as a family. We will live, and we will love, and we will enjoy the days that we have left on this planet that we are blessed with, because she sure did. We will remember her often and tell stories to Claire and Giselle, and they'll have this memory too of them, so they will know their mother even though they won't know their mother. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate it, and please at this time come up and share stories and celebrate Amy, because she was just a wonderful person, and we all miss her. Thank you all.
Last announcement about this. For those who aren't able to speak today, everyone who speaks will have that index cards at the table on the left. I'm going to put them into a book for the girls of stories. You can just make sure you say who you are and how you knew Amy. That would be great. So I don't think anyone wants to follow Wally, but since he asked me to, here I am. So I don't know how you even begin to write a memorial for one of your best friends. And I decided the only way to do this was to use my project management skills. In my job, I have to make lists. So I thought I was going to create a top 10 list. I started with 36, because that's how old she was. I thought you guys might get bored of listening to me talk. So instead I went with a list of the top 10 memories and things I loved about Amy in honor of our 10 years of friendship. So the first one is her understanding and patience. As an introvert, working with an extrovert, those of you who've met me, I know how to talk, and listening to me talk and talk and talk through things to get to a solution and decision. She listened to me obsess about my passion for certain TV shows, Broadway shows, my current obsession, Darren Criss, and other actors, enough to test even the very best friendships. She did it all with a smile. Second one is our trip with Tina to Vegas. Some of our highlights. One was Red Rock. Amy was so excited to show us the area, and she was completely shocked about how much I loved it. So one thing about me and Amy, we couldn't be more polar opposites. We literally did the Myers-Briggs at work, and we were on the opposite ends of the scale. Everything, we were completely opposite. But I absolutely loved it there, and she was shocked, because while she loved nature, I'm very happy not in nature. We played and became addicted to computerized craps, and we played until 4 o'clock in the morning and won a few $100s. And we kept yelling, no whammies, no whammies, no whammies, stop, because it was computerized. You had this button. For those who know Pressure Luck, you'll understand that. We played and won bingo at the Red Rock Casino, and we had dinner at the Vegas Eiffel Tower. Another thing about Amy is she's been trying to get me to be healthy for a long time, so Amy and Tina tried to convince me I'd like Brussels sprouts. Nice try, by the way. Didn't work, Amy. The third was that she was my lunch date every day for 5 years while we worked together. We had countless great conversations. We shared a mutual love of UBS's buffalo chicken wraps and Sergio chicken salads. We loved those weekly Sergio's visits with Meryl, another one of our coworkers who sadly couldn't be here because she's 7 months pregnant, so we'll celebrate that. Which I only wish I was bringing her their salad dressing, because every time I came to visit her in California, I would bring her the salad dressing that she loved so much. The fourth thing I loved about Amy is that for 4 years, every time I asked her when her and Wally were going to start a family, she'd say 1 more year. So on that trip to Vegas, I had bought her her favorite alcohol, and she said, well, I'm not drinking. So I looked at her and I said, well, what food cleanse are you doing? Tina looks at me and says, duh, Becky, she's pregnant. Amy looks at me and goes, I knew it. I told Wally you would never guess I was pregnant, and I didn't. But of course then we followed by lots of hugs, jumping, and Amy turned into the mother I always knew she would be, an amazing one. The fifth thing I loved about Amy was actually proving to me that she was human and she did have the ability to get stressed. Amy was the person who kept me calm at work for the last 5 years. I feel sorry for everyone who who has worked with me because I didn't have Amy in my life. But the story is that Claire's about 2 months old, Wally will remember this, and she was wailing in the backseat and Amy was driving. Amy kept ignoring Wally's instructions. I would say they almost fought. I never saw Amy and Wally really fight, but maybe there's a little tiff going on there. And she just kept making wrong turn after wrong turn after wrong turn on the restaurant. We got there about 30 minutes later, and I was like, okay, all fine. We took Claire out of the car seat, she was good. But what I realized afterwards was the restaurant was probably 3 to 5 minutes away. So that was something I'll never forget. The sixth thing I loved about Amy was that Amy and Wally chased their dream and left everything and went and did a cross-country trip. And selfishly, I loved that they made a blog that I can look at every single day and get extremely jealous of all the things they were doing. The seventh thing I loved about Amy was her ability to make me laugh. One of my favorite memories was at lunch with a whole bunch of girls, because we couldn't really understand, you're going to climb a rock, it takes 2 days to climb, how are you going to do that? But she explained to us all about the Lady J and how it's used to go to the bathroom for the climbers. There was a lot of laughing, and I'll never go into REI and not think of it the same way. The eighth thing I remember about Amy was after Meryl's wedding, it was an amazing weekend wedding in Maine, and I always think of her when I'm there. But she's in my room, trashed, not pregnant. One of the only trips she wasn't pregnant by the end, and she's lying on my bed going, I want Five Guys burgers and fries. So every time I see Five Guys burgers and fries, and of course because Wally and Amy are so selfless, they went and got it for everyone who was staying at that hotel, and we stayed up eating it. The ninth thing I loved about Amy was how amazing Amy and Wally were as hosts during all of my trips to California. She would take me, Meryl, and Tina to the best restaurants. It was quite a struggle to even let me pay for anything. They would be tour guides and show us everything and all of the sites. And I just loved seeing Amy so happy and so thrilled to be able to share it with me. And the 10th thing I love about Amy is her huge heart, her love for her friends, her girls, and Wally. I'll miss you forever, Amy. I love you.
Well, I can tell you a story. I'm Wally's father. First time we met Amy, she came to our house on a lake, and we had a very large chocolate cow who would stand on my shoulders and look me right in the eye. And when Wally brought her, he was not happy. Wally was his daughter. And who was this woman coming into this picture? So he got up on Amy's shoulders and he's looking down at her. And Amy says to Wally, do something about the dog. Amy said, Wally said, well, you're going to be part of the family. You're going to have to do something. And the next thing I heard was this thud. And the dog's behind me going, she's mean. I don't know what happened. I went on the ground. Then they became good friends, because every time Amy came, she'd make waffles. And the dog would headbutt her all the time. She was making a waffle because he wanted his right away in the process. The other thing about Amy was never say the word can't. Because I remember we were out here one time and she was studying for a brokerage license. And somebody where she worked said, don't worry about it. Nobody passes the first time. Like a red flag waving in front of her. Then she goes back. Of course she asked, what did you get for school? You know, she did very well. And the other thing I remember I always liked about her was when she did her wedding, she did a project plan. And she showed me exactly where I showed up. And it was just a little piece. And I realized at that point, there was no other input for me, which I was glad about. Show up here, do this. So, rest in peace, Amy.
I don't know most of you, but my name is Emily. I met Wally and Amy in the hospital. I was their OBGYN or one of them. So I I know most of these wonderful stories about their life together from what they told me. I met Amy when life got hard. I think the most wonderful thing about Amy for me was that I've seen a lot of people suffer. You know, I work in a part of medicine that's usually happy, but it's not always happy. And Amy always had a smile on her face. Wally and Amy sort of took me along on this journey with them as they were fighting the cancer long after she had her baby. And I got to see Amy and Wally together. And every day, no matter how much pain she was in, or even when she couldn't speak and tell us how she was feeling, she found a way to smile and let Wally know that she was going to be okay. You know, I think it says a lot about a person, the people you surround yourself with, and seeing the relationship that Wally and Amy had was just a wonder. Wally was an incredible caretaker every day of her life, and every day that she fought this, and they really fought it together to the very end. This is sort of a tender moment, but I share it because I think it says a lot about Amy. We were with Amy just a few days before she passed away, and Wally was at her side and clearly sad to see her suffering. And Amy, even at this point when she wasn't able to really speak with us, reached out to touch his head and pat him and let him know that she was going to be okay. She was really looking out for everyone else around her, even when life was so hard for her. I have an 18-month-old myself, and so sort of walking through this with them was really hard to even fathom what it must be like to be a mom in the position that she was in. She was a really incredible fighter with such energy and joy in this hard process whenever she was around her daughters to the very end. I'm humbled by their family and really grateful that all these people will be around to help them through this next phase to celebrate her.
My name is Jay Marshak, and my daughter Heather over there roomed with Amy for 4 years in Manhattan College. Got to know Amy pretty well, and the other 3 roomies are sitting with Heather there. And we'd like to dedicate our poem I'm about to read to Amy, Wally, their kids, their family, their friends, to the Manhattan roomies, and to all the people Amy's life touched and were touched by Amy. This poem is entitled Echoes. Deep beneath the rolling waves, in labyrinths of coral caves, an echo of a distant time comes willowing across the sand, and everything is green and submarine. No one called us to the land, and no one knows the wheres or whys. Something stirs and something tries and starts to climb towards the light. Strangers passing in the street, by chance 2 separate glances meet. I am you, and what I see is me. And do I take you by the hand and lead you through the land and help me understand the best I can? No one called us to the land, and no one crosses here alive. No one speaks, and no one tries, and no one flies around the sun. Almost every day you fall upon my walking eyes, inviting and enticing me. Come streaming in on sunlight wings, a million bright ambassadors of morning. And no one sings me lullabies, and no one makes me close my eyes. And so I throw the windows wide and call to you across the sky. I hope you find comfort in those words. I always do. God bless Amy.
My name is Laurel, and this is my husband, Brian. We first met Amy and Wally in Red Rocks during a climbing trip, and it was the most miserable and exciting experience. It was probably 25 degrees, and the wind was blowing 50, 60 miles an hour. And we got up the next morning and just kind of made it work. Got on a rock, I watched other people get on a rock. And we bonded over the fact that this is probably one of the more crazy experiences that we've had so far. And we're thinking, who are these two who seem to be even a little bit crazier than we are? We've not met people like them before. We've met plenty of climbers, but nobody who had the heart and the relationship that these two had. We went to Joshua Tree a few weeks later. The weather was much better. We pull in and see these people just sitting at the base of a climb, which is in itself a pretty difficult adventure to be on. Climbing is a physical and mental sport. So to pull in and see people exercising is kind of like, what's going on here? And we're watching them. And
They were doing kettlebell swings. And her and I had been suffering for a few days when these two pull up, and they're doing kettlebell swings at the campsite, and we look over there and we're like, who are these crazy people? And we sit there and watch them because we're taking a break, and I'm like, that's that couple from Red Rocks. And it just so happened they were camping right next to us on that trip, and they had come down from Yosemite to get out of the snow and warm up for a little bit. So for those of you that haven't been climbing or been on adventures in the mountains, it's always good to have a partner. And
Amy and Wally were partners. They sold their house and moved, like Becky mentioned. And they got to see so many beautiful things together. They were witnesses for each other's life. And they held each other together on the side of a mountain in more ways than one. All those windy nights and cold nights, they made it through that. And they fought and they learned that they were much stronger than either one of them had given themselves credit for. And their positivity, when we met them that day in Red Rocks, and Joshua Tree, is what attracted us to them. They're not the usual complainers. They're not sissies in life. And they sought out the things that made them uncomfortable. And that's the kind of person that Amy was. And that's the kind of lessons that she taught me. Despite climbing up rocks and falling off rocks and bleeding and snowstorms and a month on the road, all these things are not necessarily what bonded her and I. We got to be moms for the first time, and we were nervous calling Molly and Amy to tell them we were pregnant. So we waited, and it's finally time. We have to tell them. Our climbing days might be over. And then Molly called Brian to tell him that they were pregnant. So the four of us were about to start another exciting journey. Lots of sleepless nights and stinky, horrible clothing this time for completely different reasons than having slept outside in a tent for a week. Motherhood really taught me about the type of person that Amy was and the type of family that we had grown to love and know in Wally and Amy. We got to share our giant bellies and lament the fact that our climbing harnesses just aren't made for this shape. And I never quite understood, after having seen them for years wearing brown and khaki colors, the same comfortable tennis shoes and typical clothing that always made them look like they were ready for an adventure, and see her in these Hawaiian shirts. That's the one thing I couldn't place. The one thing that just seemed a little bit off. I'm like, what is her obsession? I've never owned a shirt this bright. I don't wear anything with flowers.
they travel light.
They travel light. But no matter where we were doing or what we were doing, at least one of them had a ridiculous Hawaiian shirt. I realize now that these shirts were not shirts. They weren't wearing them. They were really embodying them. And Amy's favorite shirt, the red one with the big, big flowers that kind of stood out to you and kind of said, hey, I'm here, that was probably the most shocking to see on her, is what I think reminds me of the person that she was now more than any experience that we shared together. Because she was those peaceful, beautiful, delicate flowers. She was able to bend and go with the wind and be peaceful and have this love in her heart and just search for the sunlight. But she was also extremely strong. She held strong during the winds and the rains and the tough stuff. And the next morning, she still opened up to greet the blue sky and the sunshine. And even in death, this is the woman that she was. So this is the brightest thing I put on my body in years. And I treasure it because it tells me that this is my friend in my heart. And she's here with all of us today. So next time you see a gaudy Hawaiian shirt or a ridiculous flower, think of Amy and remind her children that that's the mom that they got to have. That's the woman that's in them also. And as we teach them life lessons, teach them about being a flower.
On a lighter note, the one thing that really caught our eye with Wally and Amy was the trip to Red Rocks. And like we said, it was windy, it was cold, it was wet. And there was a bunch of us on this cliff face with this famous climber. And there was just as many women in the group as there was men. And, you know, people have to go to the bathroom. And my wife is like, honey, I have to go. I'm like, I don't know, find a rock or there's no trees. And Amy looks over and says, oh, you got to get a go, girl. I'm like, what? She's like, oh, you got to. You can pee standing up. It's a funnel that women can put down there, and you can pee standing up. And I'm like, this is one of the first things she said to me, and I like it. And Will was like, we got to go now. We've got to go to REI and go get one. So even in all the misery and the suffering, you know, she was a light. You know, she lightened the mood. She brought things up. She was just calm as an ocean. And we're looking forward to still sharing our lives with Wally and the girls and teaching them everything Amy knew and making sure that they have a life full of adventures.
Good morning. My name is Rita. I'm one of the RN at UCLA that had the privilege to get to know Amy. I had the opportunity to meet Amy when she was admitted to our unit. Unfortunately, I did not get a chance to know her on a personal level. Amy took our short interaction in a much deeper level. She listened and really do everything I told her. Wally, her husband, even shared how Amy maximized the 3 weeks she had with her family and following what we talked about before she was discharged. Amy is very smart and truly cares, not just for her own family, but to every family that she meets. In her dying moments, she was even thinking of other people. Those families with children that are sick and in the hospital. These families are not able to visit the children regularly because of financial hardship. Amy, instead of focusing on her own needs and comfort, she was thinking about them. Her family established a fund for those families because helping others is one of the legacy that defined who Amy was. Why did I say she's smart? Smart not just being a book smart, but smartness in the context that she already discovered her mission here on earth. She already aced it and graduated with honors at a very young age. Our father already called Amy to go home with him, so she can prepare a place for all of us. We should not be sad, because Amy will always be with us and guide us every day. She's now our guardian angel.
I'm bringing the box because I'll probably need it, I apologize. And I'm shaking and I'm sorry. My name is Kate, this is Heather, this is Christine, and we were roommates in college. And I don't even know if I can get through this, so I asked them to come up and read with me. I have so many happy memories with Amy, we all do. We met Amy when she was 18 years old. No, she was 17 years old. And away from home for the first time and enjoying life to the fullest, as you can imagine, as were all of us. Heather was lucky enough to be assigned to Amy just by chance in the random roommate selection, and Amy brought us all together. Amy was one of the first people I met when I arrived that late summer day in 1996 at Manhattan College. I walked into Spanish class the first day and sat next to a spunky little girl from Westchester County, just hoping to make it through the day without being embarrassed. It didn't take long for us to become friendly, and before we knew it, we were dancing the night away at the terminal, or cutting class to attend the Bush concert at Madison Square Garden, which was, no, you weren't. It's just us, we skipped Spanish. But by the end of freshman year, she, Heather, Christine, and I were basically inseparable. And at that point, we all decided we were going to be roommates our sophomore year. Christine had already had a roommate assignment, but she lived on our couch for about 6 months. And then we lived together for the last 3 years. Our 4 years at Manhattan College flew by, and before we knew it, it was graduation. And we knew that our lives would take us in different directions. We were adults. We had to be responsible. We had to pay bills. Christine, having graduated a year ahead of the rest of us, was already settled into a great job in New York, not far from us. We got to see her a lot. Heather was on her way to Philadelphia to continue her education to get her graduate degree. Amy had taken a job in New York but quickly moved to Connecticut after meeting Wally. And I ended up living in New York for about a year and then following Heather to Philadelphia, where I went to work on my graduate degree. After living together and seeing each other every day, listening to Amy's ridiculous snoring, and seeing each other in the worst of worst when we woke up in the morning, we knew it was going to be hard to be apart from one another. But even though we left each other, we always remained close. Christine's still in New York, I'm in Houston, and Heather's here in LA. But we always talked, we always called each other, we always texted, we always emailed. And whether it had been 2 weeks, or 2 months, or 2 years, we could always pick up like no time had passed at all. We would reminisce about the drunken college parties and inside jokes that only the 4 of us knew. We would celebrate birthdays and holidays, sometimes together and sometimes over the phone. We shared life's most memorable moments, like marriage and having children. I remember the day I went into the hospital to have my daughter Harper, who's only a couple months younger than Claire, and calling and telling my husband Tim, I said, "This is what you have to do." Because if any of you know me, which most of you don't, I make lists for everything. I said, you have to call our parents, our brothers, and Amy, Christine, and Heather, in that order. No questions asked. He said, okay, aye, aye. After all that we've been through, simply referring to Amy, Christine, and Heather as friends is an insult. I consider each and every one of them family and nothing less. The memories I have include all of us, because there has always been and will always be a bond between the 4 of us. And when I look back, I can't imagine my life without their kindness, their intelligence, their beauty, strength, compassion, support, and love. So here's to the memories. Here's to Amy. Here's to East Hill and Overlook. Here's to Mary Rod, which was the gross food that we had to eat in college, and I still remember it. Here's to the ramen noodles and the mac and cheese, with no milk that we had to live off of. The infamous piggyback ride that led to the falling off the bridge. The late night pizza runs to Broadway Joe's. The bacon, egg, and cheese pit stops at Sidekicks. Hans. Enough said. Waking Heather up every hour after she took a line drive to the forehead. Calling ourselves the Spice Girls. We were weird. Amy was missing Spice because she left every weekend to put herself through college by working on the weekends and bartending so that she could pay for college. Heather was Callie Spice because she's from here. Softy, well, Christine was Softy Spice because that's her maiden name. And I was Gabby Spice for obvious reasons. Here's to the Cheryl dance. Here's to pulling all-nighters. Here's to Can't Hardly Wait. Here's to the track meets where she cheered me on and the softball games where she cheered Heather on. Here's to her snoring. Here's to her always being the shortest and me always being the tallest. Here's to dropping water balloons on Heather and her still, nearly 15 years later, being mad about it. Here's to...
Out of the third floor. All the way down.
Here's to squeezing 3 30-packs into a dorm room fridge, which defied the odds of physics. Here's to falling asleep on the train and ending up in Brooklyn. Here's to celebrating the new millennium at Softy's house in Queens. Here's to our trip to West Palm Beach. Here's to the first time she introduced me to Wally when he showed up at the bar in a tux. Do you remember that? Here's to Amy and I taking Wally's brand new truck and parking it in the garage and scraping the whole side of it down the wall. Here's to the day you called to tell me you and Wally were getting married. Here's to the first time I introduced you to Tim. Here's to the day I called you to tell you I was getting married. Here's to the day that you called me to tell me you were pregnant. And here's to the day that I called to tell you I was pregnant. Here's to the late nights that turned into mornings.